She married an old man to save her family. But what happened that night changed everything. Grace was crying. She was marrying a man twice her age. On their wedding night, when he walked out of the bathroom, she froze, pale and silent. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you never miss another story that touches your heart. All right, let's begin. Grace had grown up in a small rural town in Kansas. Her father, John, spent his days repairing fences and barns for neighbors. Her mother, Mary, sewed clothes late into the night, the dim light of an old lamp flickering beside her. But no matter how hard they worked, there was never enough. Just bread, potatoes, and sometimes meat on special days. By 16, Grace already knew what hunger felt like. She'd lie and say she wasn't hungry so her younger brother Alex could finish her dinner. At night, she'd sit by the window, watching the dark silhouettes of trees and dreaming about a better life. A life where her family wouldn't have to count every dollar. Her parents always told her, education is your ticket out. And somehow she made it, a scholarship to college in the city. For the first time, hope felt real. But the city had its own rules. Connections mattered more than hard work. Money opened doors that grades could not. When Grace graduated, she found herself right where she started, broke, tired, and desperate. She returned home carrying a small suitcase and a pile of broken dreams. The only job she could get was as a cashier at a local grocery store. Every day felt the same. Beep of the scanner, fake smiles for strangers, counting small change at closing time. Then one afternoon, a man named Michael began stopping by the store. He was in his early 60s, tall, well-groomed, with kind eyes and a calm voice. He always bought simple things, bread, milk, and left generous tips. At first, she barely noticed him. But one evening, he stayed a little longer. "Grace," he said softly, "could I talk to you?" "Not here. Tomorrow, maybe?" The next day, he came to her parents' house, dressed neatly, holding a basket full of food and sweets. Her parents were wary at first, but he spoke gently, respectfully. When they sat down at the old wooden table, Michael looked at Grace and said quietly, "I want you to be my wife. I know I'm much older, but I can give you stability, comfort, and security. I'll take care of you and your family." Grace didn't answer. She just stared at her hands, her heart racing. That night she couldn't sleep. She was 25, he was over 60. She didn't love him, she barely knew him. But she thought of her mother selling her last earrings to buy medicine, her father returning home with his back aching from unpaid work, her brother still searching for a job. It wasn't love. It was sacrifice. And maybe that was the only way left. The next morning, she stepped into the cold air and saw her mother hanging laundry in the yard. "Mom," she whispered, "what should I do?" Mary looked at her daughter with tired eyes and said softly, "It's your choice, Grace. But please, don't trade your happiness for survival." Grace nodded. But deep down, she knew her decision had already been made. Deep down, Grace already knew her answer. She would say yes, for her family. That evening, she gathered everyone around their worn-out kitchen table and whispered, "I'm going to marry Michael." Her father, John, frowned. Her mother's hands trembled. And Alex, her younger brother, jumped to his feet. "Grace, you don't have to do this." "He's a good man," she said softly. "And he promised to help us. I can handle it." They tried to change her mind, but Grace was unshakable. "You've done so much for me. Now it's my turn." John sighed, defeated. Mary wrapped her arms around her daughter and whispered through tears, "We'll always be here for you." Grace nodded, her heart heavy but resolute. She felt less like a bride and more like a soldier marching into battle. A few days later, Michael returned. Grace put on her best dress, simple but clean. Her hands shook as she opened the door, but his warm smile made the fear fade for a moment.
He greeted her parents, shook Alex's hand, then knelt in front of Grace.
"I'm so glad you said yes," he said, sliding a simple silver ring onto her finger. For the first time in weeks, she saw kindness in his eyes and a flicker of hope. After the engagement, Michael began visiting often, bringing food, gifts, and even a new jacket for her father. He told stories about his life in the city, about losing his wife, and building a small business from nothing. His voice was calm and steady, filled with quiet wisdom. And for the first time, Grace didn't see an old man. She saw someone who truly listened. "You're stronger than most people I know," Michael once told her. Those words stayed with her. The wedding was set for a month later. Mary and the neighbors sewed her dress by hand, decorating it with lace. Grace stood before the mirror. She looked like a bride, but her heart whispered, "This isn't a fairy tale." His wealth, her sacrifice, the age gap, it all felt heavy. At night, she'd stare out the window, wondering if she could live with this choice. But then she'd remember her parents' tired faces, and her courage returned. The wedding day came. Grace wore a simple white dress, her hair neatly pinned, and held a bouquet of wildflowers. "You're strong, sweetheart," her mother whispered. Grace nodded, though tears already filled her eyes. The ceremony took place in a small country church. Michael stood tall in a dark suit, silver hair glinting under the candlelight. Her voice trembled as she said, "I do." He placed a golden ring on her finger, and she cried, not from joy, but from fear, hope, and grief all at once. After the wedding, Michael brought her to his house in the city, a large, quiet mansion with marble floors and house staff. Grace's worn shoes felt out of place on the cold stone. "Give yourself time," he told her gently. That night, exhausted, she excused herself to her room. But as she lay there in silence, she heard the faint sound of running water behind the wall. Her heart started racing. What if something's wrong? Throwing on her robe, she stepped barefoot into the dim hallway. A strip of light glowed beneath the bathroom door. "Michael?" she called softly. No answer. Only the sound of water growing louder. Grace hesitated, then knocked. The door swung open, and she froze. Standing there wasn't the old man she'd married. It was a much younger man, confident, healthy, his eyes alive, his smile gentle. Who are you?" she whispered. "Grace, it's me," he said calmly. His voice was the same, but his face, his body, completely different. She stumbled back, shaking. It couldn't be real. The wrinkles, the gray hair, all gone. "Please, let me explain," he said softly. "Sit down." Then came the truth. He told her that the old appearance was part of a promise he'd made to his late grandfather, a wealthy man who'd wanted his grandson to find a wife with a pure heart. To test people's intentions, Michael had disguised himself as an old man. And Grace had passed that test. She had chosen kindness over comfort, sacrifice over greed. Grace stared at him, her world spinning. "You lied to me," she whispered. "I did," he admitted quietly. "But I needed to know the truth." He explained that he'd first noticed her months ago, helping an elderly man carry groceries home, not knowing that man was his grandfather. Now, standing before her, he wasn't an old stranger anymore. He was a man who truly loved her. Grace sat in silence for a long time, trying to process everything she'd just heard. Her heart twisted between anger and hope. But when he reached out his hand, she took it. The next morning, they drove back to her parents' home. Grace said nothing the entire ride. She didn't know how to explain what had happened. When they finally pulled up to the old house, she ran straight to her mother. Michael stayed back until Grace gave him a small nod. Then he stepped forward and removed his disguise. Her parents gasped. Before them stood a young man, strong, confident, alive. "I pretended to be old," Michael said quietly, "because I needed to know who Grace truly was. But now I know, and I love her. I promised to take care of her, and of you." There was a long silence. Then her father spoke. "You lied." "For the sake of truth," Michael replied simply. Mary began to cry. "Are you happy, sweetheart?" she asked. Grace nodded through tears. "Now I am." Alex stepped forward and offered his hand. "You clever man. Welcome to the family." That night, they all sat together at the table, laughing, crying, forgiving. It was the first time in years their house was filled with warmth instead of worry. A week later, Michael had another surprise. He asked Grace to go for a drive back to her hometown. "I have something for your family," he said with a mysterious smile. Grace's heart raced with anticipation. When they arrived, a truck was parked outside her parents' house, and movers were unloading boxes onto the porch. Alex looked confused, then ran up to them. Before anyone could speak, Michael took Grace's hand and led her toward a small, cozy cottage across the road. "This is your home now," he said softly. "I bought it for you." Grace froze, unable to speak. The cottage was simple but beautiful. White walls wrapped in spring flowers, clean windows, and a thin ribbon of smoke curling from the chimney. Inside, a fire was already burning in the stove. Mary pressed her hands to her chest. John turned away, blinking back tears. Alex just let out a low whistle. "And that's not all," Michael continued, turning to John. "I've spoken with doctors in the city. Your lungs need treatment. Everything's already taken care of. You're going to be okay." For the first time in years, John didn't cough. He just stood there, silent, in disbelief. Mary threw her arms around Michael and sobbed. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for our daughter. And for us." They all stepped into the new home together. The air smelled of fresh paint and wood. On the table, someone had already placed a kettle, a gift from the builders. Grace walked from room to room, her heart swelling. Her father sat in a new armchair. Her mother smoothed the curtains. And Alex laughed as he explored his room. For the first time, her family had a second chance, a real one. More than she had ever dreamed of. That evening, Grace stood with Michael on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky gold and pink. The wind played softly with her hair. She looked at him, at his young, kind face, at the warmth in his eyes, and said quietly, "I made my choice without knowing the truth. I thought I was sacrificing myself, but it led me to you. Michael smiled and pulled her into his arms. You were never a sacrifice, Grace. You're strength itself. And I'm grateful fate brought us together. They weren't a perfect family, not even close. There had been lies, pain, and tears. But through all that, they had found something real. Love that grew stronger every day. Grace finally understood. Even the smallest act of kindness, like helping an old man carry his heavy bags, can come back to change your entire life. Now, standing beside Michael, she knew. Their story was only beginning. And that's how Grace's story found its light. Proof that even the darkest choices can lead to the brightest days. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to hit like, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe for more emotional, real-life stories that remind us, love always finds a way. Thank you for watching. See you in the next story.